Welcome to the Manifestation Lab. This is your host, Kelly Howe. From the grounded science to the mystical and unseen, we're investigating this big experiment we call life and finding what really works when it comes to manifesting a life that sets your heart and your soul on fire. Welcome to the lab. All right, friends, can you feel it? We are in a major transformative time right now. I know we see it all over the place in our external world, but this is going on internally for every single one of us. We have recently had the planet Pluto, which is the planet of death and rebirth, move into the sign of Aquarius. Now, this has been happening since last year. Some would argue even a little bit before that, but it's really going to settle in to Aquarius by the end of the year, and it's going to stick around there for the next 20 years. Now, what does this mean? As somebody who I love astrology, I'm certainly not an astrology expert, but I have gone deeper and deeper into my knowledge of what's going on in the sky. And I'm really fascinated by this because Pluto is truly in pursuit of truth and power and excavating anything that blocks the truth. I keep hearing people and astrologers refer to Pluto as sort of this like wrecking ball that comes in and like breaks down old and busted systems. Now, this wrecking ball has moved into the sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius is really focused on people. It's focused on the collective, the higher perspective, on humanitarianism. It's all about freedom and individuality and giving the space for each of us as individuals to be who we came here to be, but to do it in a way that is really for the highest good of the collective. It's really super exciting for those of us that do deep transformational work. It's like this time period is what we do. This is going to be showing up on the inside and the outside, whether you know it or not. So what this looks like is breaking out of the box, shifting stories, changing beliefs about what's possible, challenging status quo, rethinking paradigms, reimagining what the truth actually is. What is the truth? Going deeper, breaking apart and dissecting the things that we thought were functional and getting rid of the pieces and parts that don't work and putting it back together in a whole new way. It's a really, really exciting time. But I have to tell you, we're all feeling this internally. And here's what this looks like. It's like, whether you know it or not, we're all taking a really deep look at our life and the way we do things. And there's kind of this awakening of like, I don't know if I can keep doing it in this way. I need to upgrade. I need to be more efficient. I need to be more compassionate. I need to reach more people. I need to shift my systems so that I can be more loving with each of the people that I'm with, right? And this is either happening internally, sort of on a more conscious level, or the universe is doing this for you and coming through and saying, nope, this isn't going to work anymore. And it's sort of breaking that apart for you. And it's a little bit more of a rough transition into this kind of energy. So I'm not going to go deeper in this today. However, it is the perfect transition into my conversation today with Kelsey Edwards. Kelsey is a singer, songwriter, actress, mental health advocate, just a super old soul. We have a great time talking about these moments that we're talking about right now, these life-shifting moments where you wake up and you see the world and you see yourself in a new way, and you can't go back to life as you knew it. I always kind of get this vision of Rachel in Friends, right? When she's like, oh, I can't not look at it. It's like, I can't not see it. I can't not see the way that the world is broken, the way that my systems internally are broken, the way that I talk to myself, the way that I do things, like it's just not working anymore. So we have to acknowledge that and stop denying it and give it some care and some love and some compassion, and then brush away the things that aren't working. This is happening all over the world. And people are saying that this shift is really going to break down some of these systems that maybe worked for a while, but aren't working for us anymore on a global scale. So our conversation really isn't about astrology at all, but I just really wanted to bring that in because we do talk about transformation and what it's like to back away from family paradigms, religious paradigms, beliefs that we've held our entire life that are absolutely not true. It can be shocking and it can be a lot. And it takes an incredible amount of courage. And this young lady has recently left the Mormon church, and her story is so inspiring. She is just really wise beyond her years. You can catch her on her new comedy TV series, Underdeveloped, on Tubi TV or Amazon Prime. And she also has an online course called Squad Goals. I'll drop links to all of this stuff in the show notes, so you'll just want to check it out there. But to kick off our conversation, Kelsey also released a song last year called Life in a Box. And I'm kind of obsessed with it. So I wanted to play a little bit for you and then we'll segue right into our conversation. So it's great to be back with you guys. I know I mentioned in my last episode that I was really focusing on being more consistent and I have seriously failed that. This Pluto and Aquarius is really, really, really shaking my life in all the ways that I mentioned before. But I also had this clarity after I made that comment. It's like, I think that as much as I want to dedicate my time to the podcast and be here with you, I also look at these like a work of art. And sometimes you just can't rush art. It's like I want to be like the other podcasters and I want to pump out 1 or 2 episodes a week. And it feels like that's kind of a way that I'm shoulding myself, right? Like I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And so I still set the goal to be more consistent, but I just am feeling again like things are shifting and transitioning. And I don't know what that looks like for the future, other than I'm really considering this energetic communication with you, like I said, like a work of art. And I'm putting less pressure on myself to be consistent because I think that each episode is truly special. And I want to honor that and continue to bring you that kind of vibe and that kind of energy. So, all right, enjoy this song. Y'all are going to love this, and I'll catch you in the conversation.
I'm really happy, got people I love, cool things keep happening in this city of luck, but I got a confession, I'm not going to church, sometimes I drink coffee, I'm not reading a word, and I work so hard and I've come so far, but all that you see is that I fell apart, and I don't need saving, I'm not lost, I'm just so tired of life in a box, and I hope someday you'll see me as I really am. I'm not falling away, just following my own plan. Tired of hiding and playing it safe.
I want to start with saying I know you are a dedicated manifester, and I want to congratulate you on your most recent show, Underdeveloped. Is that right?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So exciting. And then I also wanted to bring up, because I didn't want to forget, your latest song.
Life in a
I
box.
have to look. Life in a Box. Oh
Yeah.
my God. That is so beautiful, Kelsey. I listen to it and I tear up. And I think so many people that have kind of taken that challenging and complicated path of really stepping outside of what our original belief system is not always easy. And I think so many of us can relate to that, like being stuffed in a box and the discomfort there. So thank you for that. It's beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time to listen to my song. That really means a lot. And thank you for, checking it out. So I really appreciate
Absolutely. I'm a music person. It moves me so deeply. So I was happy to pop on, and I now have you subscribed on my Spotify channel, and
Thank you. I really appreciate
You're welcome.
that. I got to make sure I
Yeah, of
subscribe
course.
to the podcast as well. I want to follow, support, do all the things as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to start with, you mentioned that you had left the Mormon church recently, and I don't want to make the whole conversation about that, but I do like our listeners to, well, in fact, I could probably talk to you for hours about that because I know there's so many layers there, but I do like our listeners to know where you've been and where you've, the fires you've been forged in. So maybe you could start with just talking about your childhood and your upbringing in the Mormon church and kind of what that looked like. And, if we can get to it, like, what was it that sparked you to be like, I got to get out of here. This isn't resonant anymore.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. So you want me to start talking about that and then just kind of see where we go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to turn my monitor up just to hear because I can't hear you very well. There we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, wherever feels organic for you to say, like, this is where my life well, I guess, this is what my childhood looked like in the Mormon church. And, particularly because I know you're a mental health advocate and you're as passionate as I am about, normalizing stress, anxiety, other mental health conditions, right? And just like putting it out there, let's talk about it. So I guess, how did the Mormon church and the belief systems lead to a lifetime of working with anxiety and things like that?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, and I grew up in the Mormon Church, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I have two brothers. I have an older brother and a brother. I'm right in the middle. I'm the only girl. And yeah, we actually were homeschooled too, which it's like growing up in Texas is one thing, but growing up and being homeschooled is like a completely different ball game. Um, I feel like I grew up in somewhat of like a little echo chamber bubble that like often my beliefs were like reflected back to me, not only in the home, but at church with homeschooling as well. So, yeah, it was an interesting experience to be in like such a place where the only place my beliefs were challenged were a few of my friends outside of my homeschool group. And I didn't have many friends outside of my homeschool group, but I had a few. And also I was a child actor. So we would like film sets and, grow up going to auditions, grow up in theaters, grow up in all of these things. So we had a very interesting childhood just in the way that not only were we homeschooled, but we also were like traveling all over the country, like filming movies and doing like plays and stuff like that. So it was really fun. I think like being homeschooled cons, I definitely think for me, it was perfect. It gave me a lot of freedom. It also was really challenging for me to not have like a really set structure. I often felt like I was behind in my schooling. I realize now as an adult that I days, but just looking back on my childhood and being like, oh, that's why that was so hard for me because I, was this and this and this thing. So, anyways, that's kind of like a brief summary of my childhood in Texas, just like being a child actor and being homeschooled. But
Not necessarily the most normal, quote unquote, normal
no,
upbringing.
it's really not. Yeah, it really. Yeah, my brothers and I got really close because of that. Like we're really close friends, and yeah, I love my family. I'm grateful for the way that we grew up. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did it, growing up with not necessarily a quote unquote normal structure, I hate using that word, but certainly very different from like a day-to-day life that my kids lead. So how did that lack of structure eventually lead to, and like being a child actress and going to auditions and things start to lead towards anxiety and, in combination with the pressures of being in the Mormon church and the schedule that you kept?
Yeah. Well, I think as an adult, I have real anxiety is a very normal part of my life. And of course, I have better coping skills now. I have better like tools and things like that I know how to use now. But as a teenager and as a kid, I didn't quite understand. And think I think one of my biggest sources of anxiety as a kid was always feeling like I was behind, like I was the school or like I wasn't ahead of schedule or I wasn't learning the right things or I wasn't smart enough or whatever. I was always so worried about that and always felt really anxious about that. And then also, I was a very devout member of the LDS Church of the Mormon Church, and I was very faithful, very righteous. Like they call it a Molly Mormon in the church, which is basically just like someone who follows all of the rules to a T, isn't like doesn't break any rules. Like, I was so worried about being perfect. That was like one of my main goals was like, how can I just be the most righteous, the most converted, the most perfect, kid possible, daughter of God, all of these things. So my anxiety ate up like very intensely in a few ways as a kid, not only from an education standpoint, but also from my faith, wanting to be this like perfect girl all the time. And I was always so anxious about that. And then also, yes, I'm in the film industry. So like there's a lot of anxiety there too, and like competition and they get the part. Like, am I good enough? Am I too heavy? Am I, do I look right? Like, did I, you get so invested in a role that you want a book and you may or may not get it or whatever. And then you're like, so there was a lot of anxiety that played in life and also familial anxiety as well. Like my family, my dad and my mom, like their marriage was not good as a kid. And I was aware of that, my dad ended up leaving when I was 15. I was 15 when he left. And, that was like for my family as well. Just like we had nothing, my dad left and we didn't have money and we didn't have anything. So like, my teenage years and my childhood were like very raw with anxiety for a number of different ways, or in a number of different ways. And I don't know. I'm obviously like, it's interesting to make those patterns now because of course not rooted in the same things as an adult, but like it's still there. So I've had to like learn, how to cope with it now.
Definitely. I mean, everything that you talked about already, and we have just barely scratched the surface, is, a lot for a kid to take in and to take on. I mean, just the film industry all by itself with body image issues and the idea of doing auditions and not getting the part. I can't imagine that kind of rejection and how that would have felt as a young person. But what I really wanted to kind of look at is this idea of like, I just wanted to be good, right? Like I wanted to be a good person and I wanted to be the perfect person, religious, I don't even know what you would say. Just like, it's almost like you had yourself on such a high standard, like up on a pedestal.
1,000%.
And so was that related to like, I want to be good so that I can be righteous and go to heaven? Is that the story behind that? And it's like, if I make any mistake, maybe I won't make it there.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea, and I also try to always clarify, like the way that I perceived a certain teaching or doctrine as a child doesn't necessarily mean that like that's what the church teaches, like I take my own responsibility for my perceptions of teachings. But as a kid with anxiety, with ADHD, with this like heavy like sense of like perfectionism, I was taught that you do want to be the most faithful like disciple of Christ, the best daughter of God that you can be, to honor him, be a good person so that you can return to live with him again someday and be in, they call heaven is like this, it's called the celestial kingdom for this church. And so you want to be in the celestial kingdom with your family and with God, with Heavenly Father. And it's like there was just such an intensity for me about being righteous and being a good person, and like so that at the end of the day, at the end of my life, I could look back and be proud about everything I did and be able to live with him again. And I just, they call it scrupulosity, which is almost like it's like a form of religious OCD, which looking back at my behaviors and my tendencies, I definitely had scrupulosity. I was very anal about like the way that I would study my scriptures, and like I had to do it every single day and I never missed a day, and I would pray like 2 times a day, and I would fall asleep while I'm praying. And we would have in seminary, which is like church school for kids, for teenagers rather, you wake up and you go and you like memorize scriptures and you're learning about the scriptures, whatever. And they had this thing called scripture mastery where you memorize like 25 scriptures every year. And I was like obsessed with doing that perfectly. I had to memorize every single one. I never missed any. I was like 100% on my chart. Like, and everybody always knew like Kelsey is the scripture mastery queen. Like we don't even, we don't even try. There was just something for me about being a high achiever, being perfect, being righteous, that I just like, that's the only thing I cared about, and I do think it was motivated by like life after this. And I also think it was motivated just by whatever, I don't know, OCD things in my brain that say I have to be 100%,
Right. And so does that high achieving, inner drive show up in your life still in other areas?
It does, for sure. Like I'd be lying if I said I'm not still a high achiever. I sure am. But I also have so much more grace with myself and so much more forgiveness and so much more recognition of the fact that I'm a human and I can only do the best that I can do. I don't hold myself to these insanely high standards. That I had like a really high sense of self-discipline as a teenager too. And that is good, but it also led to like my eating disorder, which was super intense and really scary. And it led to like, these perfectionistic tendencies and like this obsession with certain things. And I've let go of that now as an adult, which I'm really, really grateful for. Like I can be a high achiever without having to be a high perfectionist, and that's very freeing for me. So
yeah, definitely. That's huge. I mean, you talk about it in such a mature way, and you can tell that you've done a lot of healing work around it because you can just speak about it so easily and freely. And it's interesting. I like to look at this kind of religious spiritualism that doesn't necessarily have to be in the religious sense, but I see this in the spiritual community as well, where it's like, I just want to be good. I don't want to have any bad thoughts. I don't want to have these human emotions, these darker, emotions, because, I don't want to manifest the wrong thing. It's like you can see people get really wound up even outside of religion in that spiritual perfectionism. But I want to go back to something that you mentioned about your eating disorder that you were working with. I actually heard this. I listened to a short clip of a different podcast you did, and I just happened to hear this part where you mentioned something called orthorexia. And I wasn't familiar with that term, but I want to talk about that because I think that there are a lot of people out there that are probably walking a tight line with that and don't realize that they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Well, orthorexia is tricky because it's almost like praised in our, I don't know, day to day life. It's praised in the media, it's praised in the health and wellness industry. Orthorexia is like an obsession with clean eating, healthy eating, non processed foods, things that don't have preservatives, whatever. And that's my transition. As much as I don't like orthorexia, I will say that it saved me in some ways because I went from not eating hardly at all to at least eating food and like figuring out a way that food wasn't going to hurt me. It helped me change my relationship with food, and then it also got really bad. So it's kind of like this weird like gray area with food and dieting and stuff like that. And yeah, when I was orthorexic, I was obsessed with the book called Clean Eating. I can't remember who the author is, but it's literally just called Clean Eating. And it's like the whole idea behind eating every 3 hours, you have like complex carbs, proteins, and fats at every single meal. And in order, you have to eat every 3 hours to keep your metabolism going. And like, I was a teenager. I was like 16 or I think I was 17 at this point when I was obsessed with this. I had a food blog. I was like writing all my recipes and all my meals. I would literally carry coolers around with me like wherever I went. Like people just knew like Kelsey was the girl with the cooler who like carried her food around in a cooler because I was so obsessed with eating every 3 hours on the clock. And then I wouldn't eat preservatives, I wouldn't eat fried things, I wouldn't eat processed things. Like you couldn't have paid me to do it. One time my brother wanted to give me this French fry at In-N-Out, and I just was like appalled. I would not touch the French fry. I was just like, oh my gosh. Like I'll never forget that story because it's just like one of the most significant moments when I look back and I'm like, geez, like I had a problem. I had a problem.
Yeah, right. And it's tricky because it is healthier than not eating, right? And you're more of a like functional human if you can eat. But I think probably there's a lot of people, and I know that I have walked the eating disorder line pretty hard, in my especially like early college years. And a lot of that I think had to do with a lot of unhealed trauma, of course. Now I can look back and recognize that I was very stressed out and had like no awareness of it. Um, but I think also I was raised in an era where it was like, if you want to lose weight, you don't eat fat, which
Yeah.
doesn't like, that doesn't even make sense now, right? It
Um,
was like eat sugar-free crackers and sugar-free cookies and you won't gain weight. So like all of us were eating these like fat-free crackers and gaining weight. And I was a collegiate dancer. So, again, a lot of pressure to have a certain body shape and size and things like that. But I also transitioned into at several different times in my life, very, very clean eating, watching every calorie, counting every calorie. And I had never heard that term, but when I heard it and you started to describe it, I was like,
yeah,
wow, I think so many of us walk that line. And the thing I've learned now is that, at least for me, eating like that was very stressful for
totally.
me. And so while it was good in a lot of ways to eat clean and not put those toxins in my body, it created a lot of anxiety for me and a lot of feeling like a failure because I don't have the kind of dedication that you do. I don't have that. I'm easily swayed. If someone wants to give me a French fry, I'm like, okay, but then I'm going to beat myself up over
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Lady, not anymore, but in that stage. So what I would say is it just created so much anxiety. And what I recognize now is that, of course, the stress and anxiety around food is probably just as unhealthy, if not more unhealthy than eating the toxic food,
100.
right? Like if you're going to eat some French fries, but you're going to like send gratitude and love to it and your body and you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like just be with it. It's a totally different experience energetically. And I think our bodies metabolize things better from that space. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of land on that before we transition into talking about manifestation, because I know that you have some fun manifestation tricks. And I would like to start there. So, what are you talked about subliminals. Am I saying that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about that and kind of how you came across those and how you use them.
Yeah. So I first started I would say my real manifestation journey started in 2019. I started learning about like oh, I can change the way I think. Like I can change the way that the energy that I'm putting out. What is energy? Because coming from such a intense religious background, I was not taught anything like that. I was not taught that I had any control in any sort of scenario, circumstance, or whatever. It's always like turning your will over to God, giving your will to Heavenly Father. What is Heavenly Father's plan for me? What does God want for me? Like it's always somebody else's wants and somebody above you, somebody outside of you. And so the idea that I could have any sort of role in creating a life that I wanted really started in 2019 for me. And I was like listening to some YouTube videos on the drive set for a movie that I had booked. And that was the first time I ever like started experimenting with like energy of like, oh, like if I put out this particular energy, will this person that I am like want to come over to talk to me kind of a thing? Like, can I attract a certain type of person by the energy that I'm putting out? So that's like things I started experimenting with. And then when I moved to LA, I is kind of where the subliminal journey came in because I was working on changing my relationship with money. I did not come from money. My parents never had money growing up. And then when my dad left, we had even less money. So we like were on government assistance and food stamps and, my mom got like scholarships and Pell Grants. I went to college on Pell Grants, like complete government funding for everything because we
Yeah,
had,
I did
yeah,
too.
yeah. Okay.
And
You
loans.
understand exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had no money,
Mm-hmm.
so I ended up getting scholarships too, which I was really grateful for. But, all that to say, I did not come from a place of financial abundance and moving to a place like Los Angeles. I've always been really good at saving my money and I've always had opportunities to make money my whole life because I was a child actor. So I do recognize that privilege. Like I started making money at 5 years old, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I started learning like, okay, if I clearly like your money story is not set in stone. It doesn't have to be. It's just, we create our beliefs, we create our reality, and we, just say these things over and over. We know what to expect based on our previous experiences, all these things you already know, but it was all new for me. And I was like, okay, well, I want to change my story with money. I want to change my situation with money. Like I am not destined to have X, Y, and Z income. Like am destined to, I could be a millionaire if I want. I could make six figures if I want, whatever. And I realized that was kind of the start of like, I need to change these subliminal beliefs that I have about money, which is that there's never enough or someone else has to take care of me or blah, 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 whatever it may be. So I found subliminals on YouTube and I just started listening to them and I would listen to them every night as I slept. And they were always financial, like always money reprogramming. And I still do this. I still listen to subliminals every single night. A lot of times they're money, but other times they're other things like confidence or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea with a subliminal is just that it's like at a low frequency or certain frequency. I don't know exactly what the frequency is, but it's like basically you can't hear it or understand it consciously, but your subconscious mind takes in these affirmations that are playing while you're sleeping. And your mind is the most susceptible to these reprogrammed beliefs while you're sleeping. And you're getting these subconscious reprogramming things, playing in your brain for 8 hours while you sleep. Yeah.
Interesting. So if you listen to it, you can't actually hear the message, like the
Sometimes it
words?
can. It depends. Like I just go on YouTube and I find whatever one's resonating with me that day. And some of them are high enough and like audible enough that I can hear the affirmations as well. But other ones I listen to, they're tucked within a certain frequency in the mix that I can't actually audibly hear it, but your subconscious hears it.
Oh, that's
I
interesting. Do
know.
you know if they use like the binaural
Yes.
beats? Are you familiar with
Mm-hmm.
that? Yeah. And so there's like that rhythm in the background. And those, I think there's something with those frequencies that kind of play off each
Mm-hmm.
other that help get into that deep subconscious space. And so you started doing that. And did you start noticing things shifting
Oh
pretty
yeah,
quickly?
yeah, for sure. I mean, that was my whole relationship with money changed at that time. I came out into LA like having money in my savings and like building a certain type of business that I was working on. I was trying to do ad funnels for companies. It was like building a funnel for them and then whatever. So I was trying to run an ad
Mhm.
agency doing that. And I was like, okay, I'm, manifesting money. I'm creating more money in my life and all of these things. And then another opportunity came into my life to join a live streaming app that I started doing. And it was crazy. Like within 1 month of that live streaming app, I made more money that month than I had ever made in a month before. Yeah.
Wow.
And like at the time it was not it's less than, my standards are now, whatever. I think I made like maybe $4,500 that month. But like even so, I was like, that was huge for me. Like going from making like, oh, like maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month in Utah, like just whatever, kind of working for myself, maybe 3,000 if I got lucky, And then in a month, I made like $4,500 with just doing very minimal work. I was like, oh, there's something here, this is definitely livable income. I can live on this, and then it just kind of went from there, and I was able to grow that business to a different income level, and I was able to grow, my other businesses that I run as well to different places. And so that honestly, that journey was the start of me realizing like, oh, I can make six figures. I can make enough money to live. Like I can make, I can make $1 million. I can make whatever I want to make. And yeah, that was really, a powerful change in my understanding of money at that time. So
Yeah, oh my gosh, definitely. And the way that like that shifted so quickly for you and you saw the evidence of it right
yes.
away. I had experiences like that when I first started manifesting also, where it was like, I mean, it was like a switch flipped where all of a sudden it was like right there. And I'm like, how could I have been missing this my whole life? Like
Yeah.
see this, where has this been? Right. So I'm curious because the more I did my manifesting work, and I would say as I continue to do my manifesting work, it's like there's some things that I manifest very, very easily. And there's not a lot of resistance built into me, and I can shift beliefs around certain things very easily. And then there's other things where I have very stubborn beliefs, and for whatever reason, I have shifted my financial belief systems so
Mm-hmm.
much, but I still, it's like, I feel like that's part of my life's work this time around is working through the layers of that. And I think, I don't know if you believe in past lives and that kind of thing or ancestral trauma, but like, I really believe that I've had so many, and I've actually been told this by past life psychics, that I've had so many lifetimes of hardship. It's like my soul remembers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a piece of you, right, that always kind of is in touch with that, that history in your soul. So anyway, what I'm saying with that is that there are certain aspects where it's like, I feel so much resistance where I, work on certain beliefs and it feels like I'm starting to shift them. And then it's like, I'm just right back there. So if you come across anything like that, where you're like, dang it, why is that one so stubborn?
100%. Yeah, I feel it's like you said, it's an ongoing thing. And like money for me, even though my belief systems and my story with money has changed exponentially, it is still something I have to work on every day, right? Like I have to still remind myself, like, you're taken care of, you're fine, you always have enough, like money is flowing to me. It's still, yeah, money is like an ongoing story because it's a relationship. One of my favorite manifestation, like, I don't know, personalities is Catherine Zankina, Manifestation Babe. I don't know if you ever listened to her.
Oh, I haven't followed. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
well, her perspective about money and like is that it is a relationship, and like if you let go of doing the work with any sort of relationship, like it's like your boyfriend or your partner or your husband or your girlfriend or whatever it might be, like they're not going to want to be your partner anymore. And so money for me is one of those where it's like ongoing. But besides that, yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like there's so many that pop up from time to time. Just worthiness, I think, like a big one for me is like worthiness of love or like worthiness of a partnership. Like I've been single for a long time. And then also sometimes I have to recognize like, oh, is there a subconscious belief in there that I'm not worthy of like a partnership or I'm not worthy of love? You know what I mean? And that's like something I have to like, oh, okay, like let's look at that. Like, what's that about? Or, my friendships throughout my life have been a challenging part of my life, but also a very fulfilling part of my life, which is why I have an online course now about all about friendships, which we can talk about later. But that's also a belief system I have to check too, is like, am I worthy of friends that like see me, love me, support me, get me? Or, why am I attracting certain types of people into my life? Is that a subconscious belief about me and what I actually deserve? Like, yeah, there's so many of
Yes.
those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about your course really quickly and then we'll kind of keep going. But your course is all about helping people learn how to let go of friendships, right? And recognize when they're not resonant.
Yeah. And also like knowing who you are enough to be able to attract the right type of friendship. So it's on both sides because I felt like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like you have to be able to find and keep the friends. You got to know the maintenance skills. And then you also have to know, like you just said, when it's not a fit anymore and you have to say goodbye. It's hard.
Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, I know that you're known as kind of like the internet big sis, and you put a lot of like really great advice out there for teenagers who might be struggling. And I know as a teenager, I had those same belief systems. I didn't, of course, wasn't aware of it yet, but I had several friendships where I felt like, um, well, let's just, I mean, I don't want to say emotionally abusive, but a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit,
for
right?
sure.
I had some really great friends, and I have some wonderful friends that I still have, right,
Yeah.
from like high school. But there was other ones where they sort of mirrored things that were happening at home also, right?
Totally.
And so of course you kind of start to recognize when you get older, you're like, oh wow, I felt like this with my mom or my dad or my stepdad, and look at that, it's showing up in this relationship,
Gosh,
right?
yeah.
It's so I love that you are coaching people on that and helping them figure out how to shift the energy behind that and call in the right kind of person and say, I am worthy, I am
Mm,
worthy of people to show up and love and support me. And um, really allowing people to get curious about what could I manifest in a friend or a partner, right? Like manifesting money is so fun, but like when you start manifesting people,
totally.
that is when it's like the whole world
Yeah.
changes, right? Or or even like I love it when I get really specific and clear on my own relationship where I've been married to my husband for 20 years. He's amazing and we have a really great marriage, but sometimes we get glitchy,
Of course.
right? And it's always fun to like go back inside and go, how can I shift my own vibration and my own emotional state and, and start to manifest a different story. And it's really, really fun when suddenly it's like, and things lock back into place
Mm,
and you start seeing what you want to because you've shifted your own filter. And when your energy is different, the other person shows up different also,
everything's
right?
different. Ah,
So,
no, that's so cool. Like what you just said, there's like so much goodness in that. I was like, oh yeah, I love that. I love that. Like,
oh, thank
yeah, well,
you.
and it's so true because I think people don't often realize this that we what you said about if your family relationships and the way that that was showing up in your friendships and in your relationships is so real because it's like you're raised with a certain environment and a certain culture and a certain way of being treated and you don't know anything else other than to try and attract that exactly back. So everything is just a
Yeah.
mirror, and like our internal or external world is just a mirror of our internal world. And so when all I know is like being left, being abandoned, being forgotten, being, mistreated or whatever it might be, that's what I'm starting to attract back because that's what I think I'm worthy of. And so I had the same experience as you. I kept attracting friends that would just leave me. And I'm like, oh, I was left. My dad left me. Like I have a pattern of feeling abandoned and left and I'm seeing that in my external world now, and that also created some
Yes.
unhealthy codependency behaviors in me where I was so afraid of being left. I had like an anxious attachment in my relationships and friendships,
Yes.
like please don't leave me, please don't leave me, like you're my best friend, whatever. And it's like there was codependency, and that took me growing up and looking back to realize in my friendships, like, oh, I wasn't coming from a secure place when I approached this friendship, and so Squad Goals, my course, is a lot about what you just said too, which is like looking at your patterns, looking at your relationships, healing codependency, healing avoidance, healing these things that like cause us to interact in our friendships and our relationships in a certain way without us even realizing it, and like changing our beliefs about ourselves so that we can attract the exact type of friends that we want that mirror what we believe about ourselves and mirror like how we feel about ourselves. So yeah, thank you for like that because that was exactly how it
Oh
felt.
no, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I actually had a similar situation where my dad moved away when I was very young,
Mm,
like before I could even remember. So I think he moved, of course we're in Missouri. He moved to Florida when I was like 3 or 4. And so I didn't have conscious memories of that abandonment.
mm,
Um so that was a really interesting thing going back to that, like people left me,
yeah.
right? I had that same experience showing up where like people would abruptly just leave
Mm,
and I couldn't figure out, and it would be very painful. And it took a long time, even as an adult, even doing the work that I do, to dig into like, wow, I have some sort of implicit memory here of that abandonment. It's in there. And so energetically, it was still right, like playing out in my life. So,
mm,
um, interesting. You mentioned the abandonment part of it. And I share that part of it as well, that was a big piece of it. And then recognizing not everybody's going to do that to
right.
me. And right? I am worthy of the time and attention and support and consistency,
Yeah.
right? And love, of course, love, right? That big piece of
Of
it.
course. Well, and then the other thing too, like along with that, since we both share the abandonment wound, I feel like one of the things I've had to learn too is that not everyone's going to do that to me, but also some people might do that to me, and that's okay.
Yes.
Like it doesn't say anything
Right.
about me. It doesn't change my value. It doesn't change who I am or what I'm worthy of. And like being able to detach yourself from that, is like a huge game changer for me too. And recognizing that people are allowed to play out their own stories, people are allowed to make their own decisions, and it has no impact or like affecting me or who I am. You know what I mean? And that's been
Oh
good
my
too.
gosh. Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. I'm so glad you said that, because you're right. As young people, we internalize everything and it's all about us,
Hmm.
right? If that person acts this way, I must have done something. It's me. I'm flawed. I broke that
Yeah.
relationship. Me,
Yeah.
right? And so, oh, that's beautiful. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. Thanks. We
So
so
glad you
much in
said it.
common, so much to talk about. I
I
love
know, right? I
it.
know.
Yeah.
So I do want to back up a little bit, because I realized I skipped a really big important part of this. And what was the wake up call for you? Like you're this very devout, religious, doing everything perfectly, doing all the right things. And then like what was the like, whoa, this is not what I believe anymore,
Yeah.
and I can't stay here. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, that's a
Or moments, I
yeah,
guess.
it's definitely like multiple moments because I was raised in this church from a childhood. I mean, I was a baby, in this church. These beliefs were programmed into me, and these vocabulary and terminologies and things about ways to view the world were in my subconscious, in my brain before I even knew it. So all that to say, it took a long time to deprogram from it. But my first question started happening in 2013 or 2014. So I served a mission for the LDS Church, which is like, I don't know if you've ever seen the boys on the bikes and the white shirts, they go away for 2 years, but girls do it for a year and a half. And so I went away for a year and a half to serve a mission and preach the gospel and teach other people about the church and baptize them and stuff like that in Alabama
And
for,
how old are you?
I
How old are you when that
was
happens?
19 or yeah, 19. Mhm.
19.
Yeah, the boys
Mhm.
are 18 when they go and the girls are 19. So, yeah. So I went to Alabama. You don't get to choose where you go. You're assigned and by revelation. And it's funny because I grew up in the Bible Belt. Like I grew up in Texas. I am not a stranger to other religions or other belief systems. However, like I mentioned, I also was in an echo chamber. I had a few friends that challenged my beliefs as a child in Texas, but being in Alabama as a missionary, like on the forefront of like talking to every religion, every pastor, Jehovah's Witness, Church of Christ, like even we saw some Scientologists, like so many different religions, Catholic, Baptist, Christian, non-denominational, whatever. And I'm having to talk to all of them and answer all of their questions and all of their interpretations of the Bible. And then also the LDS Church believes in the Book of Mormon, which is the second book of Scripture, and they don't like that. And so I'm like, trying to like, I don't know, I almost felt like I was at war, answering all these
I
questions,
bet. Yeah.
Yeah, and people would ask me questions that most of the time I had the answers to, but every now and then I would be like, you got me on that one. I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure.
Hmm.
One of the core teachings of the church is that families can be together forever and you get married and sealed in their temple so that you can be with your family in the next life. And I was teaching somebody that, and she was like, that's crazy. Like, I would not think God would ever want me to not be with my family in the next life. So why do I need your little temple thing? And I was like, you got me. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Right. Ah, that's a good
It's a good
point.
one. Yeah,
Oh,
if there is a God, like, why would he ever want families to not be together ever?
yeah.
So that was like a question I had, and then more questions that are
Were you like, wait a minute, how could I not have thought of
yes,
that? Yeah.
1000%. I had never thought of it that way before because again, these things are put into my brain like so young. It's like this is just the way it is. Yeah, so many questions, so many things that weren't resonating with me, and like people who were being healed with just prayers and faith, and yet I was taught that the power of God and priesthood is the only way for God to work through people on earth, and that's like just a power that is within the church. So there's things that were not matching up for me in my experiences, and I was very confused. um but I was very devout, so I stayed. I asked, people for help and whatever. I didn't really dive down the rabbit hole too deeply. And then I just kind of had those questions like kind of growing under the surface. And I went on a backpacking trip after I got home from my mission, like 4 years later. I went on a backpacking trip to Europe in 2017. I went with a friend of mine. I was already at a place in my faith where I was kind of like, I don't know about any of this. I'm not really sure that this is matching my worldview anymore. And when I
You've been kind of cracked
Yes,
open.
that's exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like not too revealed yet, but like there's definitely a crack. And when I was in
Right.
Europe, that was my real first time out of the country besides a cruise to Mexico, which doesn't, I don't know if that really counts, but I was exploring the world by myself with a friend, but without my family, without parents, without, a group or anything like that. I was seeing these parts of the world that I'd never seen before. I had so much freedom, so much space, no schedule, no one to control me, no one to tell me where to be, what to do. And it was one of the first times in my life that I felt freedom. And like, I would get like a little emotional thinking about it because it just changed my whole perspective of everything and being like, I don't, I see people happy here, and yet I've been taught that the only way to have true joy is to be a faithful member of this church. I see people happy with their families, loving life, getting great things, having great things happen for them. And yet the church teaches that in order to have the truest joy and the happiest family and have all the blessings, you have to be a devout member of this church, keeping the commandments, honoring your covenants, all these things. So there was a lot of things that were not matching up for me. I also felt very strongly that like I don't want to ever work a 9 to 5 job here. Like I don't know that I want to be a mom. I don't know that I want to just go home and get married and all these things that I thought was my path in life, which is by the way a beautiful path, and I think there's so much power and strength in that. I just didn't really ever feel like I had any other option, and I think that was my problem. Like I felt like my expectation was like come home from your mission, get married, have kids, that's it. Like
You weren't given a
no,
choice, right? That feels very different.
exactly. I wasn't encouraged to have a career. I wasn't encouraged to pursue my dreams. I wasn't encouraged to do any of these things or build a business or whatever. I was encouraged to be a mom and just have kids and just be a stay-at-home wife, which is again such a beautiful path, but it's also something that I wanted to be able to choose and not just feel like that was the expectation. Um, so when I was in Europe, I just had all of these awakenings where I was like, I don't know if I ever want to work a 9 to 5 job again. I don't know if I want to be a mom. I don't know if I want to get married. I don't know if I want to do this. And everything just like was like burst open and I was like, oh no, like what have I done with my life?
Oh,
You know?
existential crisis.
Seriously, yeah. Yeah, because I was at
Yeah.
BYU at the time, which is the church's private university. I had one year left. I think I had 1 year left in school at that point. I was studying public relations and like business and stuff like that. Not to ever get it, not to ever have a business, but just to work in PR and no marketing. Because my plan was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll go work for a year and then I'll get married and then I won't. Um, and it was there that I started to realize I think I've set myself up for a life that I don't want. And that's really
Mm,
scary. And that's really scary. So
terrifying.
yeah, yeah.
Terrifying. How many months did you say you were gone on
It
this
was
trip?
5 weeks, so just over a month.
Weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, five
yeah,
weeks. Yeah. Just enough time to get away and experience all that freedom. And the way I see that is when we feel that kind of freedom, whether we know it or not, we are closer to the divine,
yeah,
right? Like we are like more of a channel. And so all of that insight is so easily accessible. It's like, oh wait, I want more of this feeling and I can see the truth of my life because I'm in a higher vibration and I'm
yeah.
like in a higher perspective, right? So it's a really beautiful story. And so I can imagine you went back to life and couldn't just like unsee the world the
Exactly.
way he would just
Yeah,
seen
I
it.
couldn't unsee that. That's
Can't take
exactly
it back.
no. I felt like I had almost like woken up from a spell. That's how I felt. Like I had just been living on autopilot of like fulfilling everybody else's expectations of me, doing what everybody else thought I should be doing, checking all the boxes that I thought I was supposed to be checking. And then after I had that experience, it was just like I can't do anything else. I can't I woke up from a spell and like I can't get back in it. And my worldview of the church changed. I started to realize that the beliefs I had been taught and were believing were not matching my worldview of anything anymore. Like I had friends that were coming out as gay and they're not allowed to be gay and fully participate in the church. That did not resonate with me. I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't want to do this. And so my beliefs just started crumbling over time. So that was in 2017, but I didn't even officially leave until 2 years later in 2019. So, just to give a perspective, like my first question started happening in 2013 and I did not fully walk away until 2019. So there's like a 6-year time period
Wow.
where, you're just like I feel like I have to stay, push it down, don't ask questions, just stay, yeah, so that trip really changed everything. I decided to pursue my dreams of like acting, filmmaking, entrepreneurship, music. I decided to, yeah, leave the church. I decided that after I graduated college, I would not be getting a 9 to 5 like all of my friends. And I decided to take a lot of risks that time of my life, but I would never do anything different. I'm so grateful for that time because I would not be the same person had I not gone on that trip. So yeah.
Yeah, you seem like a very old soul, Kelsey. And
It's so
I
nice.
think that, well, it's like the, I think that old souls wake up earlier.
Mm,
It's like there's a pressure inside. And then, so I'm not surprised that at such a young age, you were like, I can't live like this. I can't do it,
yeah.
Um, talk to me a little bit about the risk taking, right? And the courage that it took though, to go to your family and say, I can't, I can't do this. This isn't me anymore. How did they respond to that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it still is. I have so much love for my mom. Both my brothers have also left the church, which is funny because we didn't know at the same time that we were all going through this like dismantling process. And
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, very, very interesting that at some point one of us I don't even remember how it happened, but one of us kind of mentioned like, "Hey, I'm stepping away," and the other one was like, "Me too," and the other one was like, "Me too." Like we didn't really share with each
Oh.
other that we were kind of going through this because there's this fear of judgment that like someone will not understand, especially me. I mean, I know my brothers didn't want to tell me because I was so devout. Nobody wanted to tell me. Like I, I was super judgmental as a kid and stuff like that. So I don't blame them. But anyways, having to have that conversation with like the closest people in my life has been really difficult because there's such a morality attached to it. There's such a depth of the belief system of eternal life attached to it. And my mom, bless her heart, is so out of our core family, she's remarried now, and her husband is also a very devout member of the church, and he's an amazing man. But of our core family, she's the only person that's still in the church, and I know that that's been difficult for her. But she also has worked so hard to, change her I don't know, change her reactions maybe. I know she still believes the same way, but the way that she's able to love us and like accept us and hear about, whatever's going on in my life that's not related to the church, like really means a lot. And I it took a lot of difficult conversations to get to this point. There's been a lot of tears, there's been a lot of like pain and having to share with her like my belief system has changed has not been easy. But um I released a song and called Life in a Box. And I shared it with her and she already knew that I was out of the church at this point, but like this was the first time that I had been like so vulnerable in like lyrics and songs and everything, just like sharing how I felt. And I have a video of it on my social media, and that is genuinely the first time I ever showed my mom that song. And I was so scared.
Wow.
I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, I know she's gonna love me. She always will, but like just the lyrics and the vulnerability and the phrasing and like what is she going to say to this. But she was so lovely about it and so kind and so accepting. And I hope that every person that has left a religion, I hope eventually that their parents can get to that point, because I know that not everyone has that experience. That was a lot of the comments on my videos was like, wow, you're so lucky, like my parents are this, or my mom's like this, or whatever. And I'm so grateful to have a mom that has really worked hard to love and understand. She's also a therapist, which I think gives her a lot of space, to hold that. She deals with clients that have left, the church or whatever all the time. So I think that helps too. But yeah, it's been a journey to say the least.
I'm sure. I'm sure. A courageous journey. I know that's not easy. I mean, anybody who is looking to break the mold of family patterns, even outside of religion, it is not easy,
Mm-hmm.
But that work is, I truly believe, like your healing and your courage is healing your ancestors. It's healing your whole family. It's healing that family tree. It's
Mm-hmm.
healing global consciousness, And so I appreciate you being willing to talk about it and, showing up and then creating courses to help people move through their stuff. It's like the wounded healers. We have to just create and share the love and help keep shifting things, right? And it is beautiful that your mom's been able to walk with you, at least, as best as she can, because I know so many people just like it completely severs the family. So that's really, really good.
Yeah, very.
It's good that she's able to do that. I knew this wasn't going to be long enough. I like, even when we started, I was like, oh, I need more time. I need more time. Kelsey, this has been really, really fun. And your life has so many layers and so much depth. And I really could sit and chat with you for hours, I'm sure. Why don't you let people know how they can find you if they're curious about your course? I just want to follow you on socials, anything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. So my Instagram and TikTok is at Kelsey Marie Edwards, Kelsey, and like a double E, Kelsey Marie Edwards. YouTube is Kelsey Edwards, but honestly, if you're trying to find me on social media, if you search Kelsey Edwards, you're probably going to find me somewhere in the mix on the internet. Pretty
somewhere in there.
And then my course is it's called Squad Goals, and the URL is just courses.kelseyedwards.co. And again, it's all about how helping teen girls find and keep better friends and let go of friends. And I will say this, that I'm marketing it to teen girls, but it's really, I intentionally left the information broad enough. Younger girls can benefit, girls in college can benefit. I can still benefit from it as an adult woman. You know what I mean? Like the teachings it's universal. And so while the marketing may be like, this is for girls, whatever, it's for anyone. And so it's also very affordable. And it's a program I put a lot of time and love into. And I hope that it will help and make a difference in someone's life.
Beautiful.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to ask you one quick thing before we go, because I thought this was so cute. Talk to me about your abundance alerts that go off in your phone.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I have to bring that up.
I have it set every day. I have one at 11 a.m. It went off just barely before we started. And then I have one at 3 p.m. And, I'm really working on, like we talked about, like the money story always. It's a constant thing for me. So I'm working on attracting more money for my business. And so one of my alerts is I'm a millionaire, and I put like little emojis around it. And then the other one at 3 p.m. is the passive income is like flowing to me in large sources, at all times through many channels, or, one of those things. So I put those on my phone, and then I switch them out every now and then too, like whatever is the thing. But it's just especially when you're caught scrolling or whatever, I'm distracted. It's nice to have that little pop-up reminder, like, oh yeah, refocus my energy, and like, where am I at right now?
I love it.
So
I love it. I think that is so brilliant and so simple, and such a great way to kind of like bring you back in the zone and be like, where is my focus? Where is my energy right now? So smart. I think it's great. Thank you so much for being with me, Kelsey. And hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Please, I would love to come back. I feel like I want to know more about your journey and talk more. So I would love that.